I spent a month in the Pacific Northwest this fall, chasing dormant volcanoes. Mount St. Helens, Mount Rainier, Mount Hood, Mount Shasta. These mountains that exploded so violently they reshaped the entire landscape. And then, impossibly, they regrew. I went looking for them because my own life had just collapsed. Chronic illness took my business, my stability, my job, everything I thought I knew about how to exist in the world. I got a little bit better after 2 years of nonstop collapse. And I wanted to use that energy in a way that nourished me. I needed to understand what happens after everything burns. This is the first dispatch. It's about what the volcanoes taught me, about what myth and landscape offer when human answers fail, about finding your footing in the aftermath. If you're in your own collapse, illness, transition, the American dystopia, the end of something you thought would last forever, a relationship, an identity, this is for you. I've been on this journey. It's hard to describe, but maybe if I tell you how it started, it'll make some sense. I started this journey searching for something, and I wasn't really sure what. Was it peace? A new career? A new place to live? Utopia? The fantasy? The way that life used to be? I mean, probably not most of those things, if I'm honest with you, and especially not the way life used to be. The way it used to be, feeling the contrast to now, it seems like it was a simpler, easier, more straightforward, and perhaps more joyful time. I don't know if that's actually true, though, but that's how I remember it now, looking back. That's how I remember before. And isn't it interesting that we all have a sense of before was done for just about everybody in 2020? And before wasn't actually that great. It was pretty stressful. But I remember it in contrast to how things are now as this place that I need to get back to. And I don't know. Like I said, I don't know what I've really been looking for on this trip. But I know that I've been searching for a sense of place and normalcy in now. And I haven't found it. First, I went to the Pacific Northwest. It was this long road trip, just me and my dog. And I thought maybe it was to say goodbye, or maybe it was to find my little pocket of heaven where I could get like a sense of it's absolutely, I must come here. I don't know if I actually said goodbye. I don't know if that's what the point of that trip was. And I definitely did not find you must come here in clear, blaring signals. But I did find something else. And what I found was something inside of me. Or maybe something from inside of me that was reflected through the terrain. Because the terrain was so earthly. But it felt so otherworldly. The weather was inviting and alluring and magical. And it rained and it got cold, but it was also beautiful. It was autumn and it was that changing time and the colors were amazing. It was also very solitary. I didn't really spend time with other people or trying to get to know other people. And sure, I had little conversations here and there, chit-chats about place, weather, time. little kindnesses exchanged that meant more than they probably seemed like they should have. But intentionally, I didn't try to make friends to spend time with. It was a sojourn into my own little world where things felt understandable to a degree, manageable. More understandable and manageable than the way the world's changing around me. In my own little world, I didn't feel like I needed to try to alter my skin tone or make my features look less Latina, vulnerable or targeted. I didn't feel like I needed to polish my vocabulary to prove in the heat of a moment, and there's no way in hell he's taking me away. In my own little world, I didn't need to explain or just make sense of how my trajectory got so derailed in my own life since before and what I'm doing to get back on track. I didn't need to form a script or talking points or figure out how to position myself to stay safe. And when I say derailed, I mean as in where my career went, where my anchors for the American dream, the American way of life went, where my sense of hustle and schedule and performance went. Because every time I participated in touchstones of the realities around me, by way of news or conversations with friends back home, social media feeds, anything temporal, that was grounded in what was actually happening in the United States, I just felt panic and deep, heavy sadness. And even more like I really needed to hide or run to some sacred, protected land somewhere where things weren't crazy or unsafe. So I drove and I drove and I drove and I drove, looking for this special place. And I found lessons from the land that reminded me that this world is built from volatility and change, and sometimes eons of relative quiet stillness broken by a single moment in a series of moments thereafter that are just extreme change. Earthquakes, volcanoes, lightning strikes, and the terrain is forever changed, evolved, altered. It can never go back to the way it was once those things happen. That's how the Pacific Northwest was built. And it's interesting, at first, those things can make devastation. For instance, in Mount St. Helens, I drove to this beautiful vista on top of something called a lahar, which, as I understand, is basically a huge molten volcanic mudslide. It's mixed with bursted rock, melted water from inside the volcano, and lava and ash and mud and all the pieces of everything that is totally pulverized into this giant, sliding, blasting mudslide that washes over everything. And this lahar, I was reading, was about 150 to 350 feet thick. And the land that I was standing on, let's call it an average of 250 feet taller than what it was before Mount St. Helens blew. And there's a little placard, and it shows images of what it looked like after it was a lahar, immediately following the cooling period, post-volcanic eruption. So while I was reading, I was pausing and looking at the current day around me. And then back on the placard, post-eruption, it was like the moon. It was just true devastation, honestly. It was just total destruction and brown and this soup of homes and trees and rocks and water and wildlife and plants and history and mud and lava. All of life just shredded into one thick new paste. And it looked so barren. But I'm looking around at this forest as I'm pausing from this placard. And this is one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen in my life. There's fresh moss everywhere. The ground is painted bright green in different tones and hues, but with different patches here and there as well. And sometimes red here. Sometimes, a little bit of brown from a fallen tree that just looks alive with texture. They look like giant Christmas trees from the most beautiful tall-ceilinged houses that I can remember from my childhood. But they're everywhere, and in little clusters, just so. And there's ferns and other little trees and bigger trees and magical mushrooms, some with red caps and white polka dots just peeking out from under all the green. I have never seen a place that was actually real, not man-made or a movie set of some sort, that was so beautiful. And this was the result of this soupy moonscape lahar. All that fresh nourishment and fertile, nutrient-dense material sat and broke down and churned. It made the most hospitable ground for this little budding forest. So on my Pacific Northwest drive for a month with my dog, I didn't find an escape. I didn't find a hatch. I didn't find an emergency solution. I didn't find people to remind me of how things used to be, where I could tuck away. I didn't find life pre-lahar. But I saw the hope of what happens after you let that nutrient-dense material churn, break down, settle. And it's all, it was just over and over again on this trip. For instance, Crater Lake is remarkable, relatively close by. Mount Rainier is absolutely breathtaking. Mount Hood is hugged by these landscapes that are vast, and all of these places, they don't seem like Earth, but they are so Earth at the same time. They're just so perfect in their own broken down, regenerating ways. I went on this trip for one thing, and I left with another. I left with the feeling in my body like I can trust it, and I can trust its place on this planet, even when this planet is volatile, and even when I'm not sure what part of this planet I'm supposed to be. Like, what part our species is even supposed to be. Like, where do I fit in the me, us, them, you, ours, mine? I don't know. I don't know anymore. It's like we're an ant colony on a little hill battling it out. Maybe our colony will all but vanish. Maybe it'll be wiped out. Maybe it'll win. Maybe we will win the battle with ourselves and each other. Maybe winning and the battle itself will start a new motion against the enemy, the real enemy, tyranny, the enemy that is greed, the enemy of depression, mindlessness. I don't know. grand scheme of things, if I end up, the rest of my species and me, under a lahar of change and the explosion of our own dark nature, what can I do? What can I do about that except hope to be a part of a nourishing soil that builds a new forest somewhere down the line? And then, I know that sounds dark, maybe a little hopeless, but honestly, that idea gave me so much peace. It gave me freedom where what I was looking for might have been a container. It felt like permission to just breathe in and out. I can only play the role that I was given in this life to the best of my ability. So I observe what's actually happening, and I put it through the filter and lens of myth as I understand it, based on what the land teaches me and what my body teaches me, in a strange and very unplanned, obtuse way, in my own renaissance. And what's wild? And by wild, I guess I mean true. Unmistakably, infallibly true about place and time in my body and us. Oddly, for me to find my way as a human in all this change, I need only look to the living things on the planet my body belongs to. Because I don't think any humans know how to do this. But the land does. It does it over and over and over again. So we got a lot out of this trip, but not the answers I was looking for. So I kept going, and I guess that's a story for another day. But for this day, what did make me feel safe, whole, sane, gave me an odd sense of belonging that didn't feel too achy, but also didn't feel like a lie, it was actually myth. The context that story gives me. And I can receive story from the land, observing how this place makes itself. And that story is one that I can get some comfort in about myself and my place and us and my place in time-space reality and my place in all the things that scare me. The volcanoes taught me that destruction and creation aren't opposites. They're the same force, just seen from different angles. I'm still learning what that means. Still figuring out what grows from ash as a human. This is the first of many dispatches. The next one comes from Portugal, where I am now, still asking the same questions. If you want to follow along, subscribe here, or find extended essays and exclusive content on my Substack. Link in the description. Thanks for being here.